Okay. Hi, welcome everyone. This is an exciting moment. We are going to start a new episode in Key to Redemption in Our Hand. This one is called Our Moshiach Unity with God Has Begun. This is class number 1 in episode number 35 in our series Key to Redemption. These are the last talks the Lubavitcher Rebbe gave in his, we might say, crash course on Moshiach, in which the Rebbe taught for almost a year, from when the Rebbe told us that he's handing over the keys to the redemption in our hands. He wanted to teach us how to use that key and bring the redemption. The Rebbe said he did everything he can already, and now it's up to us. And in our last couple of, and all these, and by now it's almost 90 classes that I've given since spring of last year. I think we started sometime in April or in May to produce these 90 classes. And we've done most of the talks, although we missed a few. And we are still lagging behind. Now is already Parshat Shemos, and we're still doing this episode, which is Parshas Vayishlach. And the talks the Rebbe would give every Shabbos started after Passover, after Pesach, Parshas Shmini, Tazria Metzora. We started with Tazria Metzora as the first one. And then all these episodes continued. We skipped a few, as I mentioned. And now we're holding episode 35, Parshas Vayishlach. I didn't want to skip Vayishlach and go to where we're holding now because this is so fundamental in understanding the evolution. Because when you learn these talks, it's important to recognize that these are not isolated talks. These are very, very directed. They're very clear. Unlike, sadly, there's a lot of people think that the Rebbe is talking in very mysterious words on some very, very high and unrelatable level. It's not the case. It just takes, obviously, we're talking about Messianic light. We're talking about the ultimate revelation. It's going to take that we should apply ourselves and apply ourselves really deeply to what he is teaching and what he is saying. So, Parshas Vayishlach, the theme over here is going to be the holiday. See, let me give a very important idea that in all these talks, the Rebbe is advancing, taking us deeper and deeper into the incredible state of existence that there is in the days of Mashiach. And the Rebbe is basically telling us already 30 years ago, or 32 years ago, that on a deeper inner level, Moshiach is fully here in this world already, and we have access to everything Moshiach. It needs to be revealed into our consciousness and through our consciousness into the outer crust of existence, so that everybody in the world can start living in this Mashiach state of mind, and that Mashiach can be fully revealed to the eyes as a person, to the eyes of the whole world, and that we can continue with the Messianic prophecies, which means to build the third temple, to gather all the Jewish people from all the exile from the four corners of the world, and to bring eternal peace to humanity and endless enlightenment to the human experience, and thereby fulfilling God's purpose in creation. The fundamental elements of the time of Mashiach, the core aspects of it have already begun. And it's to us, to each and every one of us, to welcome it into our consciousness, into our understanding, from our understanding into our emotional selves space, and from there into our behavior, into our thought, speech, and actions, that we can start living already the days of Mashiach. And what the Rebbe has done is that, or what he does during that year, is each season, each holiday, each Torah portion, he unlocks the Moshiach perspective of that week and of that holiday. So he gives us the ability to be able to live that holiday or experience that holiday already from the Moshiach mindset. Literally, like we are living after Moshiach came already, how will this holiday be experienced? So, for example, in this talk, he's beginning to introduce Hanukkah. This happened still before Hanukkah, meaning this talk was given 2 weeks before Hanukkah. The Rebbe is giving us an introduction on Hanukkah and also an introduction on the great Hasidic holiday called Yud-Tes Kislev, the 19th of Kislev. What does it mean from purely Mashiach's eyes? We have to realize that once Mashiach comes, we're going to be living all of Judaism. The 3 pilgrimage holidays, Passover, Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot, and Sukkot, and all the other Purim and Hanukkah, and all the holidays, and all the Torah portions, we're going to be living them in Messianic consciousness, which is way above and beyond exile consciousness. The Rebbe is already making that transition for us, helping us reorient ourselves, helping us transition into that deeper state of existence. Now, in addition to him opening up every experience to the Moshiach experience, in addition to that, if you pay attention, you see that there is an evolution happening that year itself. In other words, the earlier talks that the Rebbe gave once he told us Mashiach is in our hands, the earlier talks, there seemed to be still a little separation between the times we're in and the full manifestation of Mashiach. There was more of a wedge, so there was still a little bit more distance. So, for instance, in the first early few weeks, the Rebbe was talking about the concept about that we have to become, now that Mashiach, the premise where the Rebbe begins all these talks. Again, I'm doing a little bit of an introduction because it's very important. The premise on all these talks were that we passed already. This is how the Rebbe starts at that time in the first talk. We in our episode number 1, the fact that we've already passed all the end time predictions. So we're already in the zone. Earlier, it could be that we're still in exile, and maybe we still need to pass a certain period of which we haven't done the time of exile, and only then can we start the Mashiach process. The Rebbe says, no, all that has happened already. The end times are done, so we are now in the Mashiach zone. So now what should become, this is the main theme of the first few talks, what should become the primary occupation of everybody is we should put all of our energies, lahavi liyamaysa Mashiach, that we become completely obsessed and completely driven and completely immersed, every single one of us, in the one most important thing, and that is to actually bring Mashiach down. There's no more obstacles. Now we can bring him down. But that was for the first 4 or 5 weeks. Then the Rebbe changes his tune because it seems like we're moving into a more advanced stage. The Rebbe says, and the main message of the next few weeks is not to do whatever we can to bring Mashiach, but that being that Mashiach energy is already present in the world, in order to help facilitate the full manifestation of the Giyul of the redemption, what should we do? We should start living with Mashiach. Not doing everything to bring Mashiach, but rather living with Mashiach. Mashiach is concurrently here already, in at least the energy level. So we can start to live. For example, I gave an example. The fast days, we shouldn't experience them from the fast days in the summertime where the Rebbe was talking those talks. There's a lot of fast days, or at least 2 primary fast days that are connected to the exile. So the Rebbe says we have to spin them around and not come, even though we're still technically fasting, but we shouldn't observe those fast days in a manner of the darkness, but we should already see in them just the Mashiach reality. For another example, the Rebbe says we can now start loving each other with the type of love that we're going to experience to each other in the days of Mashiach, because we're already in Mashiach's times. That happened the next few months. Then, towards the end of the summer, moving into fall, as the year turned, the next message the Rebbe gave was that Our avoda, our primary avoda now is to be makabel pnei Moshiach tzedkenu. We need to do all the work to go greet the face of Moshiach tzedkenu. That means of the literal Messiah, of Moshiach himself. That's an amazing statement. See, before that, he's talking about a certain era, a certain energy, a certain time in the world. Now he's focusing it already stronger on the individual, on Mashiach himself. And more specifically, we've discussed this in the first class of the last few episodes. Every episode gets like 3-4 classes, sometimes 5. In the last few episodes, we discussed how you can see the sequence. The Rebbe makes an amazing statement in Parshas Noach. In our episodes, it was called Higher Accounting, where he does an accounting. He kind of takes stock of the world, and he says, all the work the Jewish people needed to do to bring Moshiach was done already. That's an amazing... See, earlier in the beginning of the whole season, he didn't say that we did all the work. Quite on the contrary, he places the work upon us. He says that what? That the times... that if there was some kind of a blockage in time, if God kind of set the exile, like a person is sentenced in prison to a certain sentence, and then there's a certain point when you're eligible for parole. And if a person misses the first eligibility for parole, there's a second eligibility for parole. All right? But the Rebbe says once the sentence is over already, it's passed. In other words, and so it's time to get out of jail. It's time to get out of prison and go home. That's the idea. That's what he says in the beginning. We're done already. The sentence is over. But now the sentence of exile, of darkness. But now he says, okay, now that you've done everything you need to do already to bring Moshiach, it's done already. The work was also done. So now he said, it's dependent now. The ball is in Moshiach's court. Moshiach now needs to decide, needs to be inspired to reveal himself. Amazing statement. You can look it up, Parshas Noach, read it inside, follow our class, the Higher Accounting. The Rebbe then suggests that there is something we should do to help trigger Moshiach's revelation to us. 2 weeks, and what does the Rebbe say? It's the service of Kiddush Levana, sanctification of the new moon, which means beseeching Moshiach himself to reveal himself, which means the submission of the nation to the king. Moshiach is a king, and in order for him to reveal himself, he needs the people should want his kingship. That's the way it always works with kings. It happened by King David. It happened by all kings. Unless a guy is a power maniac, which isn't Moshiach, God forbid, as a person who grabs the reins of leadership on their own, a true leader doesn't want to be a leader, but needs to be inspired and desired to be a leader. So the Rebbe says you should do the service of Kiddush Levana, which is the avoda, as it says in Kiddush Levana, uvikshu es Elokeiam, the Jewish people will seek out God. There's David Malchus and King David, their king. They will seek out their king. And as the commentaries explain, we will petition Moshiach to be our king. So during that time, that was in the month of Cheshvan of 57, 52, 1992, we have to know what was going on. This is important. In Lubavitch, there was a frenzy for people to sign a paper, which was every day given to the Rebbe, more and more of these forms where people were asking and saying, Rebbe, we know you have the potential. We know you have the thing. You have it within you. We are asking you to be our king. Not just our mentor and our teacher, but to be our king. The Rebbe received those thousands of signatures, and his responses to them was, thank you, thank you. And this is causing satisfaction, and it should continue. Amazing answers. For those who argue and say the Rebbe never agreed that we should call him Mashiach, there were 2 weeks, there was not just 2 weeks, there were actually a few months, that was going on for a few months, where Hasidim across the world were signing up themselves and sending these, and the Rebbe was giving amazing answers and said, I will take it to my father-in-law's resting place, where he would always go and communicate with the higher realms, so to speak, and let it be with Isaf and Shuas Chein, which means this is satisfactory. And it seemed that's what there was a certain connection to what he was saying, that this is the avoda now, and to inspire Moshiach to reveal himself. 2 weeks later, Parshas Noach, Parshas Lech Lecha, goes past another week, Parshas Vayera. In the Shabbos talk, the Rebbe makes a stunning statement. He explains how the revelation, Vayera means revelation, and how the revelation of that God revealed himself to Abraham after the circumcision is the highest level of revelation. He explains how that it applies to each and every one of us, that our own soul is a piece of God from above, and when our soul reveals itself in our body, that is the highest revelation. When the godliness of our soul reveals itself in our body is the highest revelation. And the deepest revelation within that is going to be when Moshiach comes, because that's when godliness will be fully revealed, both globally and internally in each and every one of us. We will all be able to live the deepest godliness of our soul, the truest essence of who we are, which is a piece of God from above, which is the spark of Mashiach inside of us. But the Rebbe says the spark of Mashiach inside of us, which is the spark of the essence of God, that spark that's in each and every one of us, we can't unlock it individually until it's unlocked cosmically, until the Moshiach, or I'm not saying we can't unlock, but it's much harder to do it if you're just doing it on your own, or rather when you're doing it as part of the general unlocking of this level in the world. And what does that mean? Moshiach's soul to be fully revealed in the world. So the Rebbe goes on to explain that just like every single one of us has a little point of Mashiach in our soul, there is also a collective Mashiach, and who exists in every generation. There is a potential soul who's living on that level of divine oneness. But in every generation, the Mashiach could remain a potential and not necessarily fully activated. And the Rebbe says the potential Mashiach in our generation is the leader of the generation, who is my father-in-law. Again, the Rebbe says. Now, the Rebbe is insisting, even though this is 40 years after the previous Rebbe passed away, his father-in-law is the Rebbe. And as explained in many classes, anybody that begins to study the Rebbe's Torah knows that the Rebbe was not just, the Rebbe accepted to be Rebbe. The Rebbe is the Lubavitcher Rebbe. It wasn't his father-in-law was the Rebbe. But spiritually, his soul and the previous Rebbe's soul are unified together. When the Rebbe says the Moshiach of the generation is my father-in-law, it's a very humble way of saying it's myself. There is no question in it. There is no question whatsoever that's in the Rebbe's talks. That's the energy of all of it. Now, but here's what he adds in that week that was never said before, that was shocking. He says that since we have now already finished and completed all the work that needed to be done in exile, you see, earlier generations, the potential Mashiach didn't necessarily become the actual Mashiach. Like in every generation, the Mashiachs come and go, which means the potential Mashiachs don't manifest in actuality. But since the work has already been done, and therefore, and again, the reason it didn't actualize because the Jewish people didn't finish the work. Had we finished the work, we could have, then Mashiach would have been activated. It's like the work has to get done, and then God activates that soul from potential to actualization. But that didn't happen. But the Rebbe said in our generation, it happened already. So therefore, not only do we have the existence of Mashiach, I am telling you now that Mashiach is already revealed. Which Mashiach? The one that I just told you. My saintly father-in-law. That means the Rebbe is saying the Rebbe is Moshiach. And I'm already in a state of revelation. That was the talk of Parshas Vayera. So that kind of moves everything into a whole new light. Now, once Mashiach is revealed, the Rebbe the following week instructs the Shluchim, all of his emissaries, and all Chabad Hasidim. Your work now changes. Till now, you were trying to get Jews just to do mitzvahs, to prepare the world for Mashiach. Accumulating mitzvahs. That's what I sent you out all across the world. Now he says, first of all, everybody, every single Jew in the generation is an emissary of the Rebbe. We're all agents of the Rebbe, especially those that were selected to be the shaluchim, the official emissaries. But what's the work? The Rebbe says now is an upgrade in the shlichus. Since we're now holding at a point that Mashiach is already here, but Mashiach now needs help in him to be able to complete his mission. Once he's revealed as Mashiach, he has to be able to build the holy temple. He has to be able to finish the work of gathering the Jewish people to the land of Israel. He has to be able to fix the entire world, like it's stated in Rambam, a whole list of things that Mashiach has to do. So the Rebbe says, in order for Mashiach to be able to complete his job and actualize the complete redemption, he needs a team. What's the team? The people who are coming to greet him, which means the words the Rebbe uses is Kabbalas Pnei Moshiach, to come receive. Now, when you're coming to receive a king, what does it mean you're coming to receive? First of all, Kabbalas Panim, to receive someone, means to receive a person. Doesn't mean necessarily only abstract. Of course, there's no question that laden in what the Rebbe is saying, that we need to go greet Mashiach, means to prepare ourselves to be more refined, to be more spiritual, to be holier, to be more gentle, to be kinder, to be, obviously, it includes a lot of internal work to be in a state to be able to greet Mashiach. But as the Rebbe always teaches us, Ein Mikra Yotzei Midei Pshutai, that the verse never should be taken out of the literal meaning. To go make a Kabbalah's panim for someone, which means it means a welcoming party. That's what it means. When a great king comes to town, you go out to greet him. You make a parade on the street. So the Rebbe says to the shluchim, go out across the entire world and teach everybody about Moshiach, so that everybody is ready to come greet Moshiach, that is here already, to come greet him, which means to strengthen their bond to him and to understand the reality of who is Moshiach and that he's here already in the world, ready to redeem the Jewish people. How the Rebbe gives instructions how to do that. There's only one way you're going to get people to understand and appreciate that. How is that going to be understood? By people studying and learning about Mashiach. When they get the concept, when they understand the ideas behind it, they need to understand two things. They need to understand the concepts of redemption, and they need to understand the concept of Mashiach himself, who he is, meaning what is his energy, what is his power. Get to understand what he represents. It says that's what we should be doing. That happened that was that third stage. Remember, stage number one was keys are in your hand. Do whatever you can with all your might to bring the revelation of Mashiach. Stage number two was begin living with the energies of Mashiach. Mashiach is an energy of Mashiach in the world. We can already start living in a Mashiach state of mind. And stage number three, Mashiach is already revealed. Now come and greet him. Kabbalas Pnei Mashiach Tzidkenu. Now, these are themes you see that the weeks, there's a few weeks where the Rebbe talks about it. So the weeks the Rebbe spoke about coming to greet Mashiach were Vayera, is when he says Mashiach is revealed and now we just have to greet him. Chayesar is when he told the Shluchim that they all have to go out and do the work in their communities. That means you continue doing everything in Judaism, but everything you're doing in spreading mitzvos is with the mindset, how is this helping people greet Mashiach Tzidkenu? Finally, in Pashas Toldos, very, very pivotal, the Rebbe explains what does it mean that Mashiach is here. Regarding if Mashiach is here in the world, that means that every spark of Mashiach could now also be accessed. So he explains it in the level of the spark, and he explains it on the level of the root Mashiach soul, Mashiach himself. He develops the concept that Mashiach is deeper than the Yechidah. It's deeper than the highest name of the soul. It's the essence, the quintessence of the godly soul, which is literally one with God. If you want to know about what we discussed on that, listen to the phenomenal episode called Wake Up, Moshiach is Here. So the collective Mashiach is living in the consciousness of absolute oneness with God. And he helps each and every one of us tune in, open ourselves up to that reality. Then came the next few talks. Vayetze, Vayishlach, Yutes Kislev, the next few months. Here the Rebbe introduces a new phenomenon. And the new phenomenon is we are already sitting by that. We discussed it in our last talk. The world is ready for Mashiach. The Rebbe introduces this idea. We are already sitting at the table with Mashiach, with all the major at the great party, with the great fish, with the great ox, with the yayin hameshumer, with the wine of the ancient wine, which is going to be part of that Mashiach festivity. And now all we need to do is open up our eyes and see that Mashiach is already here. And we're already fully in the Mashiach experience. And the emphasis that he explains in that talk, last week's talk, is that meaning when I say last week's, the last episode, episode number 34, which we spent the longest 7 classes, the Rebbe says the physical body and the physicality of the world is already perfectly refined and elevated and ready for us to start fully manifesting Moshiach, the godliness of Moshiach in the world. That was his message. And therefore, since everything is ready, so let's start running the program. Let's get the show on the road. Let's all live this way, experience ourselves this way, and share this with the entire world. Not only is the Jewish world ready, the Gentile world is also ready. That was the message until now. From here is where we pick up Parshas Vayishlach, which continues in this theme, basing and further develop. He's going to do this in Vayishlach and Vayeshev, where he's further going to develop the concept and the idea that the physical world today is completely refined and elevated and ready for Messianic revelation, for the full manifestation of Mashiach. But in this particular talk, he's going to emphasize the incredible, the state of oneness that we're in already. That our marriage. See, one of the major terms the prophets had spoken about in Messianic prophecy, in the Moshiach prophecies, were that we're going to have the full marriage between God and Israel. The sages talk about it a lot. And that is that Sinai was only the betrothal of our relationship. And then betrothal means you're husband and wife, but you don't live together yet. You don't enjoy each other's company and intimacy. The days of Mashiach will be the full union and intimacy. What does intimacy really mean besides a physical bonding of two bodies? The physical bonding is just a physical vessel for a complete oneness of soul. Marriage means complete oneness. Husband and wife, they become fully merged together and reach a state where there is only one. Both of them became merged into one. It happens and it finds expression in the physical body when the two become one flesh in an act of intimacy, and then especially in a birth of a child, where both husband and wife, their genetics, their genes have become one in the third person, which is the child. But on a spiritual level, there is a deep bonding of souls. The two become one. How can two entities become one? If you're two, you're always two. You can glue two things together. You can attach two things together. You can screw two things together. You can even weld two things together. But essentially, they're two things that are welded together. How can you make absolute oneness? So we all know that in marriage, the teaching that we have from the mystics, from the Kabbalists, is the reason why a husband and wife become one is because they really were one. Once upon a time, they were one. Then where they were divided and they become two. When the souls somehow split in heaven, they become two. Originally, they're one soul. And maybe they're hanging around heaven for a long time as two. Then they come down in the bodies and they're two people that don't even know each other for the first 20, 30 years of their life until they finally meet by divine providence. And when they meet, they get married, and then they're one again. The reason they can become one is because they are initially one. And we see that in Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve were really one. God created them as one. There was one body, and then God separated Eve and made her into a woman, separated. And then later you get married again and they become one again. Now, here is the most amazing thing that this talk is coming to teach. The Jewish people and God, our souls, our divine souls, are really, we get married to God. That means we're meant to become one. How can we become one with God? God is God. How can you become one with him? Fully one. Not just beneficiaries of his light, not just recipients of his great wisdom and knowledge. No. Absolutely one with God. The Rebbe doesn't talk about it over here, but in many Hasidic teachings it discusses, it brings what the sages say, two very powerful statements. Number one, that when after Mashiach comes, Asidin Malachei the Malachim, the angels above are going to say, holy, holy, holy to the Jewish people. The same phrase that they say to God, holy, 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 they're going to say to Israel, to the Jewish people, while we're in bodies. Why? How is that possible? Holy, holy, you say to God. They're going to say, holy, holy, holy to the Jewish people. More than that, it says that the Jewish people are going to be called our name. We're going to have an upgrade in our name. Now we're called Israel, Jacob, Israel, various different names. Eventually, the name of the Jewish people is going to be Hashem's name. Asidim Tzadikim, the righteous, are going to be called B'Shmoi Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in the name of God. And Rashi says it means Shmam Havaya, the name of the Jewish people are going to be the Tetragrammaton. Not one of God's external names, but God's most personal, highest, deepest name, conveying like the essence of God. That name is going to be the name of Israel. How can that be? Because will reach a state of total oneness. So the theme of this Parshas Vayishlach talk that the Rebbe is giving of episode 35 is this fusion and this oneness of the souls of Israel as we become absolutely one with Hashem. And here is and he's going to use the concept of the sun and the moon. He's going to use the metaphor. Now, there's an interesting prophecy. I'm using this whole introduction to what we're going to learn. There is an interesting prophecy in which it says that when in the days in the future, the light, I think it's in Isaiah. Let's see where it is. Yeah. In Isaiah 30, verse 26. The light of the moon will be like the light of the sun. So what does that mean? That the moon is going to be as bright as the sun. And the way the Rebbe is going to explain it is that the sun and the moon are going to be totally married together. Like obviously, how it will reflect. The moon is still going to be the moon, but the moon will be bright as the sun in the physical sense. But on a soul level of sun and moon, their energies are going to merge together to become completely one. How can the sun and the moon become completely one? Throughout all of time, as we know it, the sun is this powerful, bright source of light. The moon has no light. The moon shines, is a luminous entity in the sky because it's reflecting the light of the sun. It's a reflector. It's all that it is. It's a reflector. And there is fluctuations in its reflection. The prophecy of the future is that the moon will be as bright as the sun. How can the moon be as bright as the sun? Even if it's fully reflecting, it's still less. If it's a recipient, whenever someone receives something from somewhere else, if you have a boiling hot tea kettle with boiling water and you pour it into a cup, and once it went into the cup, it's not as hot as the water in the tea. It goes down a couple of degrees. It's just the way, halachically, it is that way regards the laws of Shabbos. It's always that way. Anything passed on to something else is a little weaker than the source. How can the sun, which is the source, and the moon, which is a recipient, this would be the same quality? The answer is because the moon and the sun, the moon will become one with the sun. It's no more transitioning from one to the other. It's one. And does that mean that it's changed the position in the sky? I don't know. They're one. on a spiritual level at least. Both of them have reached a level of oneness. How can they become one? The answer is initially, when God, same story like we said before with a husband and a wife. Initially, when God created the world, it says he created the Shnei HaMa'oros HaGedolim. He created the two great luminaries. That's the way it says in Genesis. Then later he made the moon small. But when he created them both equal. Why? Just like Adam and Eve. Adam is the sun, Eve is the moon. The masculine and the feminine. It used to be that male and female were one entity, and the moon was just as powerful as the sun. Then God reduced the feminine element to be a recipient of the masculine light. So the male has, in terms of, and this, the moon became only barely a reflector of the light of the sun. But then after the work, the moon goes back to being, after the end of time, the moon goes back to her original greatness. And she and her husband have attained complete marriage and oneness. So this is going to be all a metaphor for the oneness of us physical human beings who have been beneficiaries of godly input during the entire history. But when Moshiach will come, we will discover how we are really only God. We are Him. And the feminine element of creation will rise and be equal to the masculine element. So now, all this will be explained. So this is just like a little synopsis of what we're going to learn. But what's important is that this is connected to we're talking about the world being refined and holy, which was the whole subject of last class, which is, he's going to continue the theme in this class as well. The reason the moon has been made small, which means the reason why God reduced our consciousness, our souls, to be considered like holy souls that are recipients of God's light, the reason why God reduced us is for the sake of the elevation and purification and elevation of sparks of holiness, the sublimation of the world, the refinement of the world. If we would come down into the world as powerful as we truly are, if our souls would not be reduced, if God would not reduce Eve, if God would not reduce the moon into being the moon, and the moon would be just as powerful as sun, then this whole purification process of the world would not be able to happen. Instead, we will blow the world to pieces with our energy, with our light. And we would never be able to fulfill the purpose of creation, of the sublimation and elevation of the world and all of creation. So for that, God has affected a reduction. He reduced us. He mitigated us. He made us tiny and small. And we're the small little wife, the small little girl, and he is the big, ginormous man, so to speak. But once the work is done, and then how do we operate? We operate by being somebody. Our consciousness is being someone other than God. And we're here, through the Torah and the mitzvot, we receive God's light. We download God's light, like the moon receives the light of the sun, and we shine it onto the world. We shine higher consciousness into the world, but we are separated from Him. Once we're done purifying the world, which is the theme of this whole season of the Rebbe's talks, the world is already sublimated and elevated. No need anymore to reduce the souls. So now God can remove the constrictor and allow the souls to return to their original light and original glory. And we can balloon, almost like allowing the balloon to balloon open again, allowing our true selves to suddenly just expand, and we can expand to who we really are. We are the feminine side of God, and we are absolutely one with Him. And then we don't experience anymore us as being a recipient of His life, but just us being Him. Because the reason we were made small to begin with is so that we shouldn't overwhelm the creation while we're fixing it. But since the repair job has been done, no need anymore to keep us small. Now we can be him. We can achieve complete intimacy with him, like a husband and wife become one in their intimacy. And that's what it means, Messianic living. We're going to be living in a constant state of oneness of God. And God doesn't have to. And the main theme that we're going to reveal, what we're going to speak of in this talk, is that God doesn't have to shine light upon us. He's not going to be giving us his light, but rather he's going to be opening us up to his essence. Now, you can't share essence. Essence is not shareable. What you can share with another person or with another being is only your light. You can never share your essence. So how can we receive God's essence? The answer is we can receive God's essence because we are his essence. Because we are in truthfully him. In other words, just like we said in marriage, the reason why two can become really one is because they were really always one. It's just that this was blocked. This was concealed from them. Now the restrictors and the filters that have been blocking us from embracing who we really are have now been removed, and we can reclaim our true identity and be him, be God. That's who we really are. And that's the type of living that happens when Mashiach comes. And the Rebbe says, and what's so amazing, he's going to explain that that's what Hasidism really is all about. Hasidism, which we learned in the earlier talks, is an introduction to the life of Mashiach. The teachings of Hasidism in its very essence is the teachings of Hasidism is really the essence of Torah, which is the essence of God. So through Hasidic teachings, we discover our essence, which is our essentially divine core in which we are one with God. So the theme of this class, therefore, is, and this whole series, this whole episode is our Moshiach unity with God has begun. So now let's take a look at, I spent 42 minutes in the introduction, and now let's see if we can get a little bit of the actual talk. Okay. So the Rebbe begins the talk as follows. One of the unique elements of this Shabbos, the Sikha was given on the 16th day of Kislev, 3 days before the 19th day of Kislev. Now, the 19th day of Kislev, I mentioned earlier, is the day that we celebrate this the Hasidic teachings. Hasidism was given a green light to spread across the world on the day of the 19th of Kislev. So this whole idea of becoming one with God through the Torah and through the essence of the Torah is connected to the 19th of Kislev. So the Rebbe is going to connect all the aspects over here and show us the deeper message of what God is communicating to us. Primarily, he's going to be using the calendar. He's going to explain to us a whole deep understanding of the meaning of the calendar, of how our monthly cycles work, and how that reflects the deepest secrets of existence and our connection to God. So he begins like this. This Shabbos, which was Shabbos Vayishlach, the 16th of Kislev, what makes it special is that the day before Shabbos, Friday, which is the day before the Sabbath, Shabbos, comes out on the 15th of Kislev. Okay. This Shabbos is special because it's a day after the 15th of Kislev. Okay. Why is that so exciting? So number one, the Rebbe says, the 15th of a month is a very special day because the moon is in its fullest. Why should we be so excited that we have a full moon? Because we learned already about this, the Jewish people count to the moon. So when the moon is on its fullest, it represents a very heightened state of spirituality. A full moon means that the moon is receiving the full light from the sun. That would mean that we have in our souls the full light of God that's shining upon us. When does that happen? Not on Shabbos. It happened on Friday. That year, it happened on a Friday. So what makes this Shabbos great is that it's a day after the Friday. But hold it. Wouldn't it have been much greater had it been the 15th been on Shabbos itself? Then we can say today is a full moon. Actually, in this particular setting, it's a little bit of a bummer. Why? Because today, which is Shabbos, the moon is already a little weaker. The moon is already reduced. The moon is in decline, which means our spiritual capacity has been taken down a notch. That should be not such a celebratory element. No, but the Rebbe, see, that's the whole point of this talk. The point of the talk is going to be how the second half of the month, where the light of the moon gets less, is not a reduction in our connection to God. Actually, it's a much higher state of union with God. This is one of the most incredible talks. The Rebbe is going to reveal to us that a reduction in light, in which the moon gets less light, does not mean a reduction in the relationship. Actually, it's a deepening of the relationship. I'm spilling all the beans already at the beginning because I'm so excited. He's going to explain that the reduction of the light is because the increasement of the essence. And when you tap the essence, you're way past the light. Light is considered external. Every day that the light becomes less, in other words, it means you have less divine inspiration. If you're inspired by God, you're still very far from him. That's why you're inspired. Inspiration is good for the dating process. Once you're married, you better get over inspiration. It's not about being inspired by your wife. It's about being one with her. It's not about being inspired by your husband. It's about being one with him. So the whole talk over here is going to be based on the fact that this Shabbos, the Rebbe says, is the day that we begin the journey into essence. I'm revealing already too much of the talk. The Rebbe has an incredible buildup. He starts off by saying that this Shabbos is the day after the full moon. And that makes the Shabbos special. Now, important to note that Shabbos is very connected to Friday. Well, obviously, it's a day after Friday. You can never have Shabbos if you didn't have first Friday. Yes, but even more so. Because we know that all the Shabbos, we are basically immobile. We can't do things on Shabbos. You can't prepare food. You can't do. So everything that you're going to make you comfortable on Shabbos, you must do on Friday. So we know that Friday prepares for Shabbos. So your entire Shabbos experience is based on the cooking, the preparation, all that you've done on Friday. So the full moon on Friday that the Rebbe speaks about is going to be very prevalent on the next day because it prepared for Shabbos, which is the day after the full moon. But the Rebbe says, hold on, let's first gather all that makes what the Rebbe does always in his amazing talks is that he first gathers the evidence. He said, let's take the pieces. Let's see what God gave us to work with. Once we have the pieces, we're going to put together the puzzle. And once we put together the puzzle, obviously only from the Rebbe's eyes, where we can put together a puzzle like this. Once we put together the puzzle, then we're going to see the glory of what we're being faced with. So the pieces of the puzzle is like this. The day before Shabbos, which is our preparation for Shabbos, is a very special day. Full moon. And not just of a regular month, the month of Kislev, that we've already discussed earlier how special that month is. This is the peak of that month. 15th day, the moon is in its full light. The day on Friday. And in addition to that, we are within 3 days of the great holiday of the 19th of Kislev, which comes out on Tuesday. That year it came out on Tuesday. Monday night, Tuesday was the 19th of Kislev. Why? Because Shabbos was the 16th. Sunday was the 17th, Monday was the 18th, and Tuesday was the 19th. So this Shabbos is 3 days, and in Torah, 3 is always a connector. It's as if there's no space. When you have 3 is considered I'm not going to get into that, but 3 is always a number in which two entities that are, there's space between them, just 3 are considered connected. So we also know, for instance, that it says that Shabbos extends its influence on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Wednesday is no more receiving that much from the past Shabbos. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday belong already to the next Shabbos. That's the way the Shabbos is. So if Yutes Kislev, the 19th of Kislev, is Tuesday, it means it's connected to this Shabbos. So this is the puzzle over here. These are the pieces of the puzzle. We have Shabbos. It's coming out a day after Friday, which Friday, what makes this Friday unique, it's the 15th of the month. It's a full moon. Then we have the 19th of Kislev coming out on Tuesday, in which is the great day of the liberation of the Alter Rebbe, Shneur Zalman of Liadi, from prison, a day that the lights of Hasidus were given a kick, that they can go out and they can blast and spread the whole world with its light. Okay. Now the Rebbe says, since everything is by divine providence, especially the day of the 19th of Kislev, that is being blessed from this Shabbos, the day that it comes out. What makes the 19th, now here's very important. The 19th of Kislev coming out on a Tuesday, the Rebbe says, is very special. Why? Because the year in 1798 was the year that the miracle happened on the 19th of Kislev, that the Alter Rebbe was released from jail. There as well, it came out on a Tuesday. Because it can happen any day of the week. Then it came out on a Tuesday. So this year is synchronized with the first year. Okay, so what does that do? That means that it's very significant that it comes out on a Tuesday. And the year that it happened, it was the same setting. That Shabbos, before the 19th of Kislev, was a day after the full moon. So why is that? That's what he's saying. What does this mean? What is the energy? What the Rebbe does is he uncovers the godly flow. What's the godly flow that is creating this setting? What's composing it? What's its essential divine composition made out of? What is it? So again, we're going to have the most mind-blowing teaching based on this idea. And I'm going to share already the point based on what we discussed earlier. The whole talk is going to develop on the theme that unlike all other Jewish holidays, that most of the Jewish holidays that we celebrate are always in the first half of the month or in the middle of the month. Passover is in the middle of the month. I'm going to speak about that soon. Holidays are always in the first half of the month. In Judaism, we always look at the first half of the month as the lucky half of the month. Second half of the month is always considered less charming. Why? So much so, I'm going to tell you an interesting thing, that there is people try especially when it comes to marriages, you're starting something new, especially you're getting married, there has always been a Jewish tradition to try to do it in the first half of the month. The first half of the month is the time of divine closeness because the moon is increasing, which means the moon is considered us. We're compared to the moon. God is the sun. The increased light of the moon represents increased blessings, increased godly light, increased enlightenment. It's a lucky time. It's a time of closeness. Second half of the month represents darkness and decline. Things are going down, down, down. So the Rebbe basically, and that's why we understand why Jewish holidays are either in the first half of the month, like Shavuot is the 7th day of the month, 6th day of the month. Rosh Hashanah is the beginning, the first day of the month. Yom Kippur is the 10th day of the month. Or in the middle of the month. Pesach and Sukkot, Passover and Sukkot, are both in the middle, start in the beginning of the month. I'm sorry, in the middle of the month, when there's a full moon, even better. Purim, right in the middle of the month. But Yutes Kislev, the 19th of Kislev, the primary Hasidic holiday, lands in the second half of the month. And not only then, Hanukkah, which follows, also is towards the tail end of the month, which is a very not good time. So how can it be that these holidays come out in the lower part of the month? So the Rebbe is going to connect it to what we're reading over here. The Shabbos that blesses the 19th of Kislev, the first time that it happened was a day after the full moon, which means Shabbos we know is the source of blessing. So what happens on Tuesday really spiritually is blessed on Shabbos. The fact that the Shabbos from when the Alter Rebbe went out of jail and the Shabbos from where the light of Hasidus was blessed to go out and blast the world did not happen in the beginning of the month. Happened when the moon was in decline in the second half of the month. Tells us about something about these holidays. Hanukkah and the 19th of Kislev. They belong to a different category. That's where this is where this all is going to. It belongs to a different category. What's the category? It belongs to a state of existence where we don't need any more God's light, because we are no more creations receiving his light. That's when we need his light. We've reached a level where we are him. And when we are him, we don't need his light anymore. Quite on the contrary, the light is getting in the way. Dim the lights so that we can have each other's essence. Make it dark. Hasidism, Hanukkah, they all celebrate the future state of existence, the state of Moshiach, where we are past the externalities of the relationship. We're in the essence. And that's why it's particularly these holidays that come out in the second half of the month, the part of the month where the moon is no more receiving the light, but rather it's growing into the oneness. And that's why the light is becoming less. Now, this is a very deep concept. It's going to take us a few classes to develop it. But this is where this is going. Hasidism is an interlude to Mashiach. Hanukkah, even though it happened a long time ago, is also a very Messianic holiday. So they both belong to this level of the relationship, the maturity of the relationship. It's not superficial. It's not external. It's much deeper, and even deeper than the biblical holidays, because they're about the future, not about the past. What time is it? Okay, we're already 58 minutes. Let's read at least the question chapter, which I basically said right now. He says, we'll understand all of this. And this is all seen by the fact that the Shabbos that blesses the 19th of Kislev, the first time it happened, and also the year the Rebbe was talking, happened to fall out the day after the full moon, which means we're moving into the time when the moon is declining from the light, which in all of history, until Moshiach Tzedkenu speaks to us and flips everything on its head, that's what the Rebbe does. He takes everything and flips it on its head. Until Judaism, until we're getting this precious, infinitely precious teachings, it was always assumed that from the 16th, 16 is a negative number. We're starting to go down. We're losing it. It's just we're going downhill. We're going down a slippery slope of less light. And we know we're not going to get depressed because we know that next month it's going to be a new light. That's the way we've always seen it. Comes the Rebbe, and the Rebbe says, no, second half of the month is much greater than the first half of the month. The second half of the month is the time when we reach maturity in our bond, in our relationship, that we're past the external and we're in the internal and in the essential oneness. We're in Moshiach zone. We're in the state of being him, not receiving from him. Where the moon and the sun are on par with each other. Absolute marriage and oneness. And that's expressed in the fact that the Shabbos that blesses the 19th of Kislev is in the first day after the full moon, when we're transitioning from light and going into essence. Let's read. All this is going to develop in the next few classes. I just want to read chapter 2. He says, by first asking the question regarding the 19th of Kislev, which is considered the holiday of all holidays. There's a Hasidic teaching that the 19th of Kislev is the holiday of all holidays, that it has a change. There's something very different in it than all the other holidays. Pesach and Sukkot, Passover and Sukkot, are instituted on the 15th day of the month. And it makes sense because that's when the moon is in its fullest. Shavuot is an interesting holiday, the Rebbe says, because Shavuos is not, the Torah doesn't give it a date. The Torah says count from Passover 47 weeks, and then you celebrate Shavuos. So it's not set fixed on the calendar. And really, in truth, Shavuot can come out on the 5th day of Sivan. It can come out the 6th day or the 7th day when we set our Jewish calendars based on the sighting of the moon. Today's days, it always comes out on the 6th, but it could fluctuate. But even according to that, it will always come out in the first half of the month. Okay? It will always be in the first half of the month when the moon is in a state of incline. The moon is receiving more light. It's a happy time for Israel. It's a happy time. The moon, the God's light is shining upon Israel. God is smiling upon us. It's growing more and more, which is in the case of the 19th of Kislev, the Rebbe says, is a holiday. And not only doesn't it fall out on the 15th of the month when the moon is in its fullest, but more than that, it comes out in the second half of the month when the moon is in decline, and every day it gets darker. And similar to this, and even more so regarding the holiday of Hanukkah, which is not like now. Hanukkah is not biblical, and Purim is also not biblical. Purim is actually part of scripture, but it's still considered like more, it's not in the 5 books of the Torah, it's in the prophets. But in any case, Hanukkah and Purim have a certain equal footage. They're both rabbinic holidays. And Purim, however, we know comes out in the middle of the month, on the 14th, all over the world. And in certain cities, we make it on the 15th, Shushan Purim. In Jerusalem, it's on the 15th, which is in the middle of the month. But Hanukkah is different. That Hanukkah starts on the 25th of the month, of the lunar month, which means almost at the end of the month. The moon is almost dark. And the days of the moon of Hanukkah is 8 days. So as Hanukkah progresses, the night sky gets darker and darker until you reach like 5 days into Hanukkah, and it's completely dark. There's no more moon. Then the new moon is born, and the last few days of Hanukkah are already in the next month when the moon. But most of Hanukkah is during the decline and the darkest day when the moon has no light at all, representing complete divine concealment, which seems to be tragic and terrible. How can we have a holiday then? So to explain this, he says, I'm just going to add one more point from chapter number 3. And that is, he says, it's interesting in the Jewish calendar, when we count the months, when we're counting the days of the month, we count it like the secular calendar, right? You go, today's January 3rd, okay? So, and then tomorrow will be January 4th, 5th, 6th, and then it continues till the 30th of the month, sometimes 31 days in a month. But in the Hebrew calendar, we don't have 30 or 31. We have 29 or 30. Fine. Then we start over again, the new month. So in the secular calendar and the Gregorian calendar, the months really don't follow the moon. So it makes sense that you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then until you reach 30th and 34, 31 days, and then you start over again. But in the Hebrew calendar, which it follows the moon exactly, we follow the cycle of the moon. The Rebbe asks, I have a question. We're following the moon. Let's say the first day of the month makes sense because a little bit of light. Second day, there's more light, so it's 2 days. So it's more increased light of the moon. Then we reach the 14th, the 15th, it's a full moon. So then when we get to the 16th day, the Rebbe asks, how come we say it's the 16th, which is an increased number more than 15. Really, we should, on the 16th, since when we look up in the sky and the moon is a little less bright than the night before, then the day should be the 14th day of the month. And then the next day should be the 13th, and then the 12th, and then the 11th and 10th. In other words, the number of the days in a month should be in decline, following the state of the moon. The moon's light is becoming more and more, and then it's going down. So the number, which represents the energy, the number is the energy. It's almost like the first day you have a certain amount of power. The second day you have double the power. Third day you have 3 times. See, if you're looking deeper, then things are not just superficial. Things have meaning. So one day you have a certain amount of power. 2 days, 2, 3. So in the 15th, you're in the full power, and then it starts declining. So it should be less power. So the number should be going down, but it's not that way. In reality, we continue counting an increased number. Now, you might say, of course, we have to do that, or else you couldn't differentiate. If the day before the middle day of the month would be the 14th, and the 16th day will also be the 14th, then you'll have 2 14th day of the same month. And then you'll have 2 13th day. Okay, so if it's just for differentiation matters, the Rebbe doesn't say, this is my own explanation, this little nuance, then we could have called it 14b. We should count like this: 1a, 1b, 2a, 3a, 4a. And then when we get to 15, then you start 14b, 13b, indicating that you're the second half of the month. But you're calling it by the right number, which is a decreased level of light. The Rebbe says that since, according to Torah, the second half of the month has increased numbers, that's a sign that the energy is really an increased energy, although there's less light. This is where he's going to prove the concept that he's teaching us in this teaching. That it could be you're going into darkness and there's less light, but that's not because you're going farther away in your relationship. It could be you're getting much deeper into your relationship. And whoever you're in a relationship is willing to show you their darkness, their inner secrets, and not only their light. Instead, when you're really married to someone in a very deep way, I know it's painful, but this is the truth. They let you see not only the delightful smile, they sometimes let you see their inner self, which sometimes is not as bright. But that's why they're married to you, so that they can share with you something deeper about themselves, which to a person on the outside, they're only going to shine and smile to. So that means they're allowing you into their darkness. They're being vulnerable, they're being open with you, they're allowing you into their essence, into their secret, into their closed area. And that can get a little darker. Sometimes it can get pretty dark, but that's why we get married, to be able to share space with someone else on the deepest level. So this is where this talk is going. Let's see how we're going to get there. Bezrat Hashem. Thank you for joining. I hope today to give class 2, because we're a little bit behind in all of this. Maybe this evening we might do class number 2 in this amazing talk. Meanwhile, let's have Moshiach now.